Hello, my name is PJ Caposey, Superintendent of Schools from Meridian CUSD 223. Today I will walk us through the process we use to make long-term projections in terms of where our revenue will be. Currently we are in a healthy financial position due to a number of factors, and I will walk us through how we can project forward and see what our projections look like in the coming years so that we can make the best decisions possible to keep our district in a healthy financial position. First question is why do we do this process? Because a process, anytime we look at anything with projections, there are inherent flaws and complications that come with it. And we do it so that we can project out and see what decisions we can make proactively. So that means we have a responsibility to the taxpayer, to the community, and to our students to put ourselves in the best possible position to provide the maximum capacity education for our students. We do so with limits, however. We are not able to do all that we want for kids. We are able to do all that we can. And so in order to best do that, we need to understand what our revenue flow looks like so that we can best subsequently design what our expenditures look like. As we enter into this process, as we do with any projections, we warn that our process is going to inherently be flawed in many ways. The first area for a school that we have to be aware of is that we are so dependent upon the state, and the state changes so rapidly that our projections are often wrong very quickly after we make them. Still, we need to do so to be healthy in terms of understanding our financial situation. So we are often wrong largely because of the state. Second is because of local property value. And we are also very dependent upon that. So we have to project as to what that will do. So we attempt to be very conservative in our projections in terms of where we're going to be at revenue-wise. If we end up wrong on the side that we were too conservative, we can always make excellent use of additional revenue. We don't want to be wrong, assuming that we're going to have things better than we are and getting ourselves in a position where we're in financial distress. So the assumptions that are being made, just so everyone can be aware of, and we can inform you if we change those, is that first and foremost that the state's going to continue to fund us at the level they are per student. That's a extraordinary oversimplification of a very complex mathematical equation that the state uses in order to fund us per student, but we're just going to go with that for projections purposes. Additionally, we are funded at different levels for students who that are need-based or that are in special education. So we're assuming the percentage of students that we serve stays the same there. The other thing that we are assuming is that all revenues that aren't tied to GSA or aren't tied to our tax revenues are also impacted by student enrollment. We know this to be inherently false, but it's a very complex way to process to separate that. So if we are wrong in this process, we are wrong on a conservative measure and that we can recover from. And the other assumption we have is that a relatively conservative 1.5% increase in EAV each year. That is very similar to what we've experienced last year and what the initial projections from the county assessor are for this coming year. So with that being said, let's get to the data and how we got to our projections. First is our enrollment. Our enrollment is declining precipitously. Our high watermark, we're over 1,900 students. We can see in FY21, which just to be clear is school year that begins August 20, ends in May or June of 21. We are down under the 1,500 mark. Why does that matter? The reason why that is that we are funded on general state aid based on the number of students we serve. So we're not based on the number of students that are enrolled. We're based on the number of students that we have on the average of our best 3 months of attendance. So when we say that attendance matters, it certainly does. We receive around $3,500 per student that we serve. So if we average 10 additional students attending each of the 3 months we use, which are typically August, September, October, somewhere in that ballpark. If we average 10 more students, so one more student per grade level, that's over $35,000. That's nearly another teacher. So that's why we harp so much on attendance. If your kid is just not wanting to go to school, we need them to be at school so that we can increase our attendance percentage, primarily because we can't teach kids that aren't here and it's better for their education. Secondarily, it impacts us in terms of where we are at financially. You'll notice that these numbers are higher annually than they are on the previous slide. The reason for that is that GSA is figured off of the last 3 years. So when we have declining enrollment, that means that the 2 years prior, we generally had higher enrollments. When you do a 3-year average, we are constantly going to be a little bit higher. Conversely, if we were growing, then it would be a little bit lower. So based off of receiving roughly $3,500 per student, and based on the number of students we serve, simple multiplication problem, go around, and you can see that we receive a significant amount less. We project to receive a significant amount of money that is lower than what we receive now in terms of the money we receive from the state in terms of GSA. On the other hand, if we project a 1.5% increase in EAV, which as homeowners is a blessing and a curse, right? So if the property is worth more, we pay a little bit in additional taxes, but it also is good for our long-term wealth. You see what happens to the EAV. It is very important for us to say this is assuming that the tax rate stays level. So they're assuming that we are not increasing taxes from the school in terms of what we're asking. This is just based on a 1.5% increase in EAV annually. So outside of general state aid and outside of the money that we receive from property taxes, there's about $2.7 million that come from other revenue sources. A lot of those include the state, include grants, include sometimes gifts to the district, etc. So what we did for the sake of this one is we used the $2.7 million that we anticipate receiving this year, broke it down per student, and then used that same calculation with the declining enrollment to see what would happen. So when we put all of the numbers together, you see a graph that doesn't trend in the right direction. So what this is telling us is that we're in fiscal year 17 right now. So in 5 years from now, fiscal year 21, if we spend zero additional dollars, which is a tough proposition, right? Because salaries tend to increase, benefit costs increase, energy increase, fuel generally increase. That's the natural CPI. As time expands, things tend to increase. If we expended nothing additional somehow, if we continued to reduce staff and do whatever it took, our budget would look $420,000 worse than it looks right now, simply because of the revenue coming in. As the months continue, we will continue to try to do long-term expenditure profiles, depending on what information we get from the state in terms of how that will look, if there's additional burdens that will be heaped onto the district or not. But for now, this was just intended to show us that as a result of declining enrollment, even if the financial situation stays somewhat healthy in terms of what occurs with EAV, we are needing to make decisions proactively to adjust for a significant downward trend in the amount of money we have coming into the district. As always, thank you for listening. Again, my name is PJ Caposey. You can reach me at 815-980-0310 if you have any questions or comments.